Yo, in this video, we're going to be talking about something most creators do not want to admit. I believe that there is a disease that is plaguing the content and personal brand space, because if you feel like your soul is eroding, if you feel like your voice is on mute, if you feel like you're having to show up and pander to some metrics, algorithms, whatever it may be, and you are literally dying inside, this is the conversation you did not know you needed. So let's get into it. All right, you and I are going to have a heart-to-heart because I feel like you probably need to hear this if you're a creator, thought leader, or expert trying to develop your personal brand online through making content. And all the big creators do not want to talk about it. So I'm going to, because this disease has plagued me for over a year and a half, 2 years now. Your boy has been on a forced sabbatical from making content and developing his personal brand. And that is because I got lost in the sauce, and on the other side felt like I didn't know who I was per the content that I was making. So let's start from the beginning, because maybe this story will make you feel like, I'm not alone. I started making content back in 2017 on Snapchat, vlogging. Back when Snapchat had 5-second clips that you had to stitch together to actually put out a vlog. I'm dating myself here, but that's what it was. And it was just from a place of expression. I had no worries about the formulas and the hooks and the frameworks and how to make something go viral. There was something inside of me that I wanted to put out into the world. Call that being a creative, call that being a creator, whatever. It was just a form of self-expression. No expectations, just fun. But as with anything that you do for a long time, you get good at it. And when you get good at something, you develop pattern recognition. It's like Neo in the Matrix. You start seeing the code and understanding how things function, and then you can manipulate them. So I got really good at content. I started understanding editing, hooks, storytelling, how to make something go viral, how to make something pique attention for the viewer. And I got really good, in fact, that I grew my own Instagram following to over 100,000. I grew a content marketing agency to over 7 figures, helped other experts in their space grow millions of views and millions of followers, and I became that guy in that space. And in becoming that guy, I started feeling this pressure to perform as that guy. So I started diluting the content. I started only showing parts of myself. Like if you go back and look at my Instagram content, you'll see a very soft-spoken, therapeutic gentleman. And guess what? That is a part of me, but I felt like I had to package it that way to ensure to sustain the audience that I developed, to sustain the content that I developed, and to sustain the expectations of the business. And over time, it became exhausting. It became literally, I would look at my content and be like, who the fuck is that? And I was scared to show up with all the different other elements of me, because I was like, if I do that, it's not going to hit. If I do that, people are going to be confused. If I do that, everything collapses. And it really took a toll on me. The person you're watching right now in front of you on camera is someone who has been through a year and a half plus of healing, a year and a half plus of personal development, a year and a half plus of therapy, to even be able to get to a point to publicly create this video and feel safe doing it. Now, what does this mean in psychological smart people terms? Dr. Irving Goffman calls this impression management. For us to survive as people and navigate the world, we have to impress upon others in social interactions what we believe they need to see for us to be accepted. Now, that was some, oh my God. Let's just break that down for just a second. If you want a job interview, you might go into that job interview dressing differently, right? That's normal, because you need the job and you actually want to impress that person because they have something you need. But when you do that for an extended period of time in a social setting just to be accepted by the group, hint, hint, peer pressure, teenagers, beware, right? You start to lose yourself in that process. Now take that and put it on social media, you magnify it 10x. And you see this all the time. You see people creating content after years saying, I'm sorry, the notorious I'm sorry video, or I'm burnt out, I'm going to take a break, because they're perpetuating something that is not sustainable, because we're human, we evolve. We're much more than just this highlight reel that we put on social. And I 100% fell in that trap. And I call that trap burnout by burial. And this burnout from burial is not burnout because of the work or the consistency or the publication or the content calendar. No, this is burnout from being buried in a persona that you can no longer sustain, that you are no longer aligned with. And the danger here, and I want to caution you, because if this is what you're feeling, this is what's going to happen next. This persona, as you perpetuate it, becomes the personal brand. That's online. But over time, that personal brand actually becomes your identity. And the scary part is you feel like that's the only thing that you're allowed to put out into the world. At least that's how I felt. And that's why I call it burnout from burial. And what it ultimately led to, outside of the pressure and the anxiety to publish, it led to a collapse. And I'm not saying I collapsed on the floor, but a forced reprieve, as I said in the beginning. I could no longer even create because on one hand, there was, I don't feel aligned to this person that I am showing up as. And then on the other hand, there's this fear of failure if I show up and even introduce elements of who I am. So it's like, oh my God, I can't even win. So let me just back into silence. Now, the beautiful thing about backing into silence, especially if you need it, especially if your nervous system is screaming like, yo, something is not right, you need to take a breath. Silence allows you to hear yourself and understand yourself again, especially if you do it with intention. But for me, in addition to the healing, the silence had me confront something that I was not ready for, but it was absolutely my truth. So in said reprieve, I realized something about myself that was at the core of why this became a problem for me. The foundation in which I built the personal brand on once I got to a place of success was real shaky. It stopped being about expression and started being about reaction and the feedback loop. I was in it for the likes, I was in it for the results, I was in it for the shares, I was in it for the virality on one side because that's what my business expected of me. And on the other hand, I felt like I had to keep that momentum going, the likes, the shares, the views, the dopamine, right? And if I didn't hit virality, it'd be like, you're a failure. It was that constant pulling of the slot machine, waiting to hit the jackpot. And in reality, what that leads to is not a place of independence when it comes to your content where you are independently showcasing who you are. It creates a relationship of dependence. Because once that momentum fades, let's say you post something that is super authentic to you, but it flops. And then you're like, well, that's not it. I'm not going to do that anymore because I want all of the feedback to be positive. I want to feed my dopamine. And as I began to learn more about this relationship that I was now developing with the content, with my personal brand development, I found out that this is like backed by science. Dr. Adam Atler's book, Irresistible, talks about the dopamine system that these platforms are built upon to hijack our dopamine, to keep us in this feedback loop. Basically, in very simpler terms, you're just like a rat who figures out that if I press this button, I get food. And then you're just like, nah. And then you just die because you ate too much food, because you've overloaded your dopamine and you don't really have a healthy relationship with this. It literally hijacks your brain. So for me, when I realized that, and in the silence, in the dark night of the soul, I realized that the only way out from this is through, which means after the therapy, after the healing, I had to ask myself two questions. Number one, my therapist said this, what are your values? And once you establish your values, you can filter everything that you do, whether it's in your real life, on social, through those values. The second question is what was really important for me, since I realized that my relationship with content and personal branding became all about the dopamine. The question is, what would I create if no one clapped? Let's just let that one breathe, okay? What would I create if no one clapped? Now, the reason why that question was so powerful for me, it's not because it like uprooted my content strategy. It's not like the next day after I sat down and journaled answering that question that I was like, all right, we're posting content. What's up? No. The power in that question is it exposed my shadow. It made me very, very aware that in pursuit of this success, in pursuit of this notoriety, in pursuit of this personal brand growth, I was hedging. I was hedging so much, diluting the message, hiding parts of me that felt off-brand, despite them being on truth. And it was in that unfolding, that unshackling, and that integration of my shadow in a way that was healthy, I realized that if applause is your compass, then resonance is collateral damage. Now, what do I mean by that? Resonance is when you are attuned to yourself. You have a very clear idea of your beliefs, your values, and who you want to be in the world and how you want to move in the world. Essentially, resonance is your frequency. It's the core of your identity when you're fully connected. Resonance is the sound of your soul reverberating through your work, regardless of whether it's trendy or not, and you're at peace with that. So when you start creating from that place, not to perform, not for the likes, not for the admiration, you begin to really cut through the noise. And everyone that is meant to be in your frequency miraculously starts to show up. And the beautiful thing is you're aligned. You are not pretending anymore. And quite frankly, at this point in my life and my career, I rather be hated for who I am than loved for something that I am not. Really, I can tell you, because I'm on the other side and still healing. I'm not saying I'm like fucking perfect now, no, but I'm definitely in a much better place. It's a lot better when you're just moving in resonance. Now that you might have a little bit of self-awareness around this, maybe I've helped you a bit or two as you hear this Egyptian man rambling, I will give you a word of caution. For me to be able to achieve this place of resonance for myself, I had to first go inward to then be able to come outside. And to do that, you do have to kind of sit in the silence. Now, I want you to be better than me. You do not have to take a forced reprieve. You do not have to collapse from exhaustion of pretending to be something that you're not, or putting yourself out there in a diluted version of yourself. So what do you need to do? You need to make silent practices ritualistic in your day-to-day. That means something as simple as maybe you go on a 30-minute walk, raw dogging life, no podcast, no music, to really become center with yourself. Or maybe you do what Julia Cameron says to do in her book, The Artist's Way, which I highly recommend you read if you're in this state that I just described, which is called The Morning Pages. You wake up in the morning, you sit in front of a blank journal, and you just brain dump until you fill 3 pages top to bottom. No framework, no prompt. You're just literally brain dumping onto the pages. Or this practice of silence could be something as simple as before you hit record, you just go and come back to center and be the person that you are supposed to be the only way that you know how. And the reason why I want to encourage you to make entering silence a regular, recurring, ritualistic practice in your day-to-day life, especially if you're a thought leader, creator, or expert, and I'm going to say this once and let you go, it's because genius whispers, and you just have to be in a place to be able to hear it. And once you hear it and are operating from alignment and transmitting resonance, I can assure you, my friend, you are not just going to reclaim your voice and sound different, you are going to feel different. And everyone who is exposed to your frequency is going to feel the same, because they will no longer be just followers. They will be mirrors, because they see themselves inside of the work that you're putting out into the world. So I cannot wait for you. Don't call it a rebrand, call it a reunion. A reunion to the voice that you had that spoke up before all of the branding muted it. I cannot wait to see you on the other side. If this video hits you in the heartstrings, this awakens something inside of you, or if this helped you in any kind of way, share it with somebody who needs that help. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.